Hello, my name is Violetta Morari and I work in the Munster Technological University in Cork, Ireland. On behalf of my colleagues, Dr. Catherine Palmer and Dr. J.P. McCarthy, as well as the extended Spirit Maths team, I will tell you a little bit today about the Spirit Maths and the Spirit Maths Extra projects. Our journey started in 2019 when we got funding from the National Forum. The National Forum is a national body in Ireland responsible for leading and advising on the enhancement of teaching and learning in Irish higher education. So we got funding in 2019 under this call called Strategic Alignment for Teaching and Learning. We rolled over the Spirit Maths in 2019, and then in 2020 we got more funding from the National Forum and we rolled over Spirit Maths Extra. So I'm going to split this presentation in two. I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview what we have done in Spirit Maths, and then I will give you an overview what we are doing this year in Spirit Maths Extra. We started by designing a survey for first year students to try and understand their perception of mathematics and preferences for digital learning resources. Originally, we're going to administer the survey once, but after COVID hit in March 2020, the team wanted to know what changed in their perceptions, so we administered the survey again in February 2021. We did discover that there are no statistically significant differences between the two surveys, so this allowed us to combine the data from the two surveys. The Spirit Maths projects had several strands, but we originally focused on numerical learning resources. The survey did show that our students wanted videos and past exam papers, digital software that allows them to practice maths questions, and videos showing word solutions. The team then set about to try and do as much of that as possible. Another interesting thing that came out in the survey was that students are very focused on using their own lectures material. So even though it did come up that they do use internet and maths online and textbooks and other stuff, they very much do want to use first and foremost materials provided by their own lecturer. So following the survey, the team did set about developing digital resources. I did speak about the digital resources at this very conference last year, so I will give you just a very quick overview on what we did. Okay, so we started with interactive self-assessment questions. So the student would read the question and they will have the opportunity to write their answer in the answer box. The students then would have the option of watch a corresponding video of the solution, and then they would have the opportunity to practice a question exactly like that one using numbers. The team created two types of videos of the written solutions. The first one is the silent animated videos, the H5P animations, which were very popular and the students liked those a lot. And the second type were non-silent videos created using packages such as Udo Creations. The corresponding numbers questions were created to match the videos. Students would look at the question and they could enter their answer to see if they're correct. Or, if they required help, they could click on one of a number of hints. Each question would have between 1 and 5 hints. At each stage, the students could go to the previous part. Of course, they could reveal the answer and then they could try another question like this one. So these were the interlinked resources, from the self-assessment question to a video of worked solution to numbers, which provided hints, solutions, randomized variables and customized feedback. Okay, now I will tell you a little bit about the Spirit Maths Extra project and what we set out to do. So firstly, we wanted to do a diagnostic test for our first year students. The second thing, we wanted to do targeted resources and pilot them. And the last thing, we wanted to use analytics to determine the engagement with and the impact of those resources on our students. Okay, so let me tell you now about the first output of the Spirit Maths Extra project, which is the Essential Toolkit Quiz, which is basically our diagnostic test. After a comprehensive survey of diagnostic testing at third level, particularly in Ireland, we learned that a lot of diagnostic testing is concerned with testing students on various topics that they're supposed to know about going to third level, and then establishing a cutoff score such that students scoring below that score would be identified as at risk of struggling with maths at third level. Originally, our idea was a bit different. We hoped to include a large proportion of questions that might be called abstract reasoning, and those abstract reasoning questions were to attempt to capture students' perceived ability and would employ machine learning techniques to come up with a more sophisticated method to identify at-risk students. However, that approach had to be abandoned as it would place a big burden on the diagnostic test administrators. The switch was made then to a diagnostic test based on topics and topic knowledge. So basically, this is what we ended up with. A short test, 15 questions, which takes 30 minutes to complete, and no calculators allowed. This test is played on our Maths Online module. The MTU VLE of choice is Canvas, so every student in first year that does take a Maths or Stats module would have access to Maths Online, because when they would log into Canvas, this Maths Online module comes up for every one of them. So, the Spirit Maths Extra Essential Toolkit Quiz is based on core skills and knowledge. It would help students identify areas that they need help with, and then it would point them towards helpful resources, such as our Academic Learning Center. If a student answers the questions incorrectly, then the toolkit would point them towards various resources, for example, towards a numbers question, or direct them towards watching a video. So our diagnostic test is ready, it is on Canvas, and it will go live in Semester 1, 2020. All lecturers can import the diagnostic test into their own maths module. They can see what students are doing in the test. They can use the analytics on Canvas to see the areas that are problematic, and then they can initiate an intervention, whether in their own class or get onto the department or Academic Learning Center. The second output of the Spirit Maths Extra was to pilot the resources to a particular group. We picked the module Maths 6051. This is an essential maths and stats module for business students. It does have a lot of students, and traditionally this module has quite a high failure rate. In Semester 1, we had 6 academic staff from the Maths department teaching this module. The Spirit Maths resources were placed onto the Maths 6051 Canvas page. The course coordinator made a video explaining how the Spirit Maths resources can be used. Canvas announcement was made, the links were given, and all the lecturers gave an overview of the resources during class time. So, this screen is what the students would see. For example, a past paper, you can see here very nicely embedded. They would have the question, they'd have a video solution, and then they'd have a link to a numbers question. At the moment, the team is trying to measure the engagement of the Maths 6051 students with the Spirit Maths resources, as well as the impact of those resources on their grade. As I said, there were 226 students in total, and over 30% of students used Spirit Maths resources, over 20% of students used the numbers resources, 18.6% of students used Spirit Maths video resources, and 8.4% of students used both. It is interesting that some students chose the numbers and some students chose the video resources. The initial findings are that, as expected, more average lecture views are associated with a higher Semester 1 grade. We examined the data using a linear regression model. We used the student's final grade for Math 6051 as our response variable, and then students' Leaving Certificate points, which is the equivalent of the A levels, video lecture view counts, written notes, view counts, exercise sheets views counts as our explanatory variable. We are finding that, as expected, the Leaving Cert points were associated with Semester 1 grades, as well as lecture videos and Spirit Maths numbers. This is all I have time for today. If you have any questions, please contact any one of us at the addresses on the slide. Thank you.